Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something massive, AI ethics. Now, you hear it all the time, right? The idea that artificial intelligence is this totally unprecedented existential threat. It's like a sci-fi nightmare coming to life, machines just waking up and taking over the world. Honestly, it feels like every time you refresh your newsfeed, there's another warning about some super capable artificial agent that we're completely going to lose control of. But what if I told you this fear isn't actually a Silicon Valley invention? What if, believe it or not, humanity has actually been trying to solve the exact same alignment problem for literally thousands of years? So it begs the question, is AI actually a completely new moral threat? Look, we sweat over rogue algorithms today, and we're pouring billions, literally billions, into safety research. But this deep-seated anxiety over creating entities to act on our behalf, it actually goes back way further than the invention of the microchip, or server farms, or heck, even electricity. The very core of this dilemma actually stretches back thousands of years, right to the dawn of civilization. We're constantly obsessing over these modern AI fears, right? Rogue algorithms, alignment failures, the terrifying loss of human control. It all feels so incredibly modern to us. But these anxieties, they aren't new at all. Thousands of years ago, humanity was already dreaming up the bronze giant Talos from Greek mythology and the clay golem from Jewish folklore. So today, we're going to bridge the gap between our current tech anxieties and these ancient conceptual models, because it proves that our fear of the things we create has kind of always been a fundamental part of the human story. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with the modern AI illusion, then ancient guardians, modern problems, move on to mechanisms without minds, explore the Pygmalion trap, dive into the responsibility gap, and finally, governing our creations. We're essentially traveling from ancient Greece and 16th century Prague straight into modern corporate governance to fundamentally reframe how we understand technology and responsibility. All right, part one, the modern AI illusion, or rethinking the quote-unquote unprecedented threat. You know, we so often frame AI as this independent moral actor with its own desires. But honestly, that completely obscures the real issue. The reality is that harmful outcomes attributed to AI are far better explained by human design choices and governance failures than by machine autonomy itself. Think about that for a second. That fundamentally shifts the blame. The central ethical problem isn't the machine waking up. It's how we, us humans, delegate our authority to non-human systems operating at this massive scale. When something goes wrong, the risk and the fault almost always trace right back to our own human practices of delegating authority, rather than some spooky ghost in the machine. Moving right along to part two, Ancient Guardians, Modern Problems. Let's look at the lessons we can learn from Talos and the Golem. So the crucial thing to understand here is that these aren't just fun bedtime stories. They're actually ancient conceptual models for modern tech buzzwords. Take Talos, for example. He was this bronze sentinel programmed to hurl rocks at approaching ships to protect the island of Crete. Incredibly powerful, right? But he had a single point of failure, a nail sealing his life force inside his ankle. This perfectly mirrors our modern AI concept of bounded optimization and critical vulnerability. And then there's the Golem, an artificial protector made of clay from 16th century Prague. Its activation was entirely conditional, which is exactly like modern conditional activation and override mechanisms. These ancient stories literally encoded the exact same governance dilemmas we are facing with AI today. Just think about the modern kill switch, a human-controlled override mechanism used to interrupt or totally deactivate a system. Well, in the Golem story, the rabbi who created the creature would deactivate it right before the Sabbath simply by removing a specific word, the Shem, from its mouth. And bam, the creature would instantly revert to inanimate clay. This ritual is just a brilliant pre-modern analog to a technical shutdown mechanism. It proves a timeless foundational rule. No matter how powerful our delegated agents become, they absolutely must remain subordinate to human judgment and control. Okay, part three. Mechanisms without minds, from automata to the analytical engine. Let's jump to the 1830s. Charles Babbage designed the analytical engine, this massive, steam-powered mechanical computer. The process was brilliantly simple for its time. You input data to the store, process it in the mill, and then return the result to the store. But it was actually his collaborator, the brilliant Ada Lovelace, who recognized the crucial limitation here. The machine was not a thinking entity. It was just a symbolic execution engine. Historically, we were outsourcing complex execution, but, and this is key, we were not outsourcing actual understanding. The machine manipulated symbols based on instructions, sure, but the human was doing all the actual thinking. And to really see the difference between mechanical execution and semantic understanding, look at the 18th century Jacques Dros's writer. It was this mechanical boy made up of thousands of intricate gears, flawlessly drafting 40-character texts with a quill. Beautiful, right? Yet it possessed a total lack of comprehension regarding the actual words being written. And folks, this is the exact illusion of today's large language models. We see flawlessly executed symbols, perfectly structured sentences, completely coherent text. But the machine itself, it possesses absolutely zero contextual judgment, self-awareness, or lived experience. It's essentially just a highly advanced digital version of that 18th century automaton. Which leads us perfectly into part 4, the Pygmalion trap and the very real danger of anthropomorphism. We, as humans, continually fall victim to anthropomorphism. It's our persistent, hardwired tendency to attribute moral, emotional, or human qualities to artificial and non-human entities. Think of the Greek myth of Pygmalion, a sculptor who carved an ivory statue so incredibly beautiful that he actually fell in love with it. Well, because modern conversational AI simulates empathy, reasoning, and creativity so incredibly well, we are basically hardwired to project our own humanity onto it. We so desperately want to believe there's a real mind inside that machine. But honestly, this is a really dangerous psychological trap because it critically weakens our scrutiny of the actual human beings and massive organizations who built and deployed these systems in the first place. And this brings us to an absolutely crucial realization. The ethical risks these systems pose arise from our projection and misattribution, rather than from genuine moral agency. This is a massive takeaway for us. We spend so much time debating whether an AI is good or evil, but until a machine actually crosses the threshold into genuine consciousness, which, let's be clear, current AI definitively does not, the risk is entirely about our own psychological projection. We're wasting time fearing the machine's intent when what we really should be doing is rigorously analyzing its creator's design and motives. All right, on to part 5, the responsibility gap. When things go wrong, where does the blame actually lie? Let's drop the philosophical hammer here for a second. There is a vast, unbridgeable difference between delegated agency and moral authority. Machines only have delegated agency. Their power is derived entirely from programmed objectives, and they inherently lack any capacity for real accountability. I mean, they can't go to jail, and they certainly don't feel remorse. Human beings, on the other hand, hold moral authority. Human action is intentional, it's grounded in normative understanding, and it's tied to actual legal and moral liability. We need to make this crystal clear in our minds. Machines only have delegated power. Human beings exclusively hold moral authority. So why do we feel this massive responsibility gap when things go terribly wrong? Say an algorithm denies a loan, or worse, misidentifies a suspect. Why is it so incredibly hard to figure out whose fault it is? Well, it's not some machine uprising, it's institutional fragmentation. The blame just gets completely lost in a highly distributed web of human agency. It's a remarkably long chain of engineers, data curators, tech executives, procurement officers, and end users. Add in the fact that the sheer scale and speed of execution completely replace in situ human deliberation, and boom, you have a perfect recipe for governance failure. When an autonomous system makes a split-second error, the liability just vanishes into a massive corporate pipeline. Which brings us to our final section, part 6, governing our creations, and the 5 criteria for proper delegation. If we want to govern these systems effectively, we need enforceable criteria for proper delegation to hold the humans behind the machines accountable. First up, auditability. We absolutely must be able to trace the data and the decisions straight back to their source. Second, interruptibility. Mandatory, functioning human kill switches must exist, no exceptions. Third, reversibility. We need to stage deployments in a way that allows us to safely pull them back if things go sideways. Fourth, capability bounding. That means placing strict, verifiable limits on what the system is actually allowed to do out there in the real world. And fifth, compute monitoring. We have to track the massive resources required to run them. AI safety isn't just a coding problem, guys. It's fundamentally a cross-layer coordination task and an organizational imperative. Ultimately, AI is not some independent actor. It is simply a socio-technical mirror of human moral agency. Whenever we look at artificial intelligence, we are ultimately just looking at a reflection of our own human design choices, our deep-seated desires for protection and control, and frankly, our own deeply flawed governance structures. The intelligence might be artificial, but the responsibility, that is entirely human. Which leaves us with one final lingering question. If AI is just a mirror of humanity, what happens when we don't like the reflection? I really want to challenge you to look inward on this one. We need to scrutinize our own institutions, our corporate structures, and our own human accountability, rather than just fearing some rebel machine. Because the responsibility, as always, is entirely ours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.